My name is Denise Denoto. I live in Cohoes, New York, and I'm employed as the Communications and Outreach Specialist at Consumer Directed Choices in Albany. I use a wheelchair for mobility because of a neurological disability. I have spinal muscular atrophy. I contacted DRNY because I was having difficulty with the purchase of a new accessible van with high-tech driving controls. I felt that the process should be moving quicker than it was, and I needed an advocate to help me speed the process up and make things happen quicker.
She came to us in a situation where she was stuck and she wasn't getting help from ACCES-VR. The provider that ACCES-VR had told her that they weren't going to travel from Rochester, New York to see her in the Albany area. They said that they came one time and then they said it's not financially feasible for them to travel out. So she came to us, and the way that we looked at this was to try and see if there's some alternatives that we could work this out through.
Before I started looking for a new van, I had been driving independently for 20 years. But I had an injury in 2016. I fell and broke my femur, the biggest bone in your leg, biggest bone in your body. And because of my injury, I couldn't transfer independently from my driver's seat back to my wheelchair. I had to make the move to drive from my wheelchair. That was a big change for me because prior to that, I'd only been driving in a regular driver's seat. That move required me to think about the ways driving impacts my life. And I knew I was privileged to have that independence, but until it was taken away from me, I didn't realize how much I relied upon the privilege of just being able to get up and go whenever I wanted to. Without an accessible van that I could independently drive, I had to make several changes. I had to move out of an accessible apartment where I had been living for 20 years to a new place where I could access the paratransit system. Since I wasn't driving myself, I had no other option but to use paratransit every day so I could maintain employment. I had to change my job routine and my job responsibilities, though. Part of my job doing outreach involves being out in the community, and there were simply areas I couldn't get to because I didn't have access to independent transportation. The paratransit system only operates within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed bus route. People with disabilities deserve the same access to our communities as everyone else, and for some people, especially in a rural area, having access to a high-tech driving system may be their only option. If there's no paratransit system, having the ability to hop in a vehicle and go somewhere might be their only option. I think it's important that people know that these systems are available, that they have the ability to access a vehicle.
So Denise's initial request was in August 2016 when she first started with ACCES-VR.
In New York State, people with disabilities that need assistance to remain employed can receive services through ACCES-VR. It's the state's vocational rehabilitation program. I applied for services because I needed a new van with high-tech hand controls in order to be able to maintain employment with my current job. I applied for services and was authorized in August of 2016 for a high-tech driving evaluation towards the purchase of a high-tech van. I received my first driving evaluation in October of 2016 after learning that New York State only had 2 licensed and authorized evaluators to assist with the evaluating. Rochester Rehab came to my house in August to do the evaluation, and it was deemed that I would need to have further training before I could purchase a vehicle. I didn't hear anything for 6 months after that. I tried to contact my vested counselor to make arrangements to go to Rochester for further testing and training, or to have them come to me.
It took some time to figure this out because the office the ACCES-VR office wanted to go with still trying to make the provider in Rochester work. So there was some time lost with that. And if ACCES-VR knew that it had a provider in Brooklyn that would come up to the Albany area, they could have set this up a long time ago. So there was delays from that, from ACCES-VR not knowing its own providers and its own options that it had, to also trying to work out something with a provider that was reluctant to travel across the state to come and meet Denise in Albany.
During that time, the contract lapsed with Rochester, so I had to start the process all over again with a new high-tech evaluation center out of Brooklyn, Triborough.
In this case, what really resolved this was Triborough. I have to just give a shout out to Renan and his staff. Really made this happen for Denise, and it was, that was the connection, and it had a serendipitous quality to it, because it was a case prior to Denise's. That's how I learned about Triborough, and that's how things came together, and we were able to solve and get through this impasse with ACCES-VR.
Triborough came to my house for their first evaluation in the spring of 2017, but it took us all summer to complete the process. And in the fall, finally, we had an evaluation report. I had completed almost 10 hours of driver training, and I felt comfortable with the system that they were recommending I buy. I thought that meant I could move right to purchase, but things were delayed. The report wasn't written correctly, paperwork wasn't signed. And then finally, after a year, I was able to purchase a new van in February of 2019. But we still weren't done, because then the van had to be modified. But actually, modifying the van was the quickest part of the whole process, because the van was done by the end of May of 2019. I finally took delivery of the van in my home in June of 2019, and I've been driving independently since then.
Denise's case, fortunately, there was a resolution in it. It was wonderful to see that she got her van, she got her modifications, she's working today, she's traveling independently, and everything, it's a happy ending. It's just one of the reasons why, some of the work that we do at DRNY, it is life-changing. So it's absolutely worth giving us a call and seeing what we can do.
DRNY's assistance helped the situation because it helped my mental outlook on the whole process. For once, I didn't feel alone. I had somebody fighting with me, and just knowing that there was somebody else that I could lean on and I could depend on to help me, I didn't have to just call and complain to my ACCES-VR counselor all of the time. I had somebody else that I could call and say, this is what I've tried. Is there anything else that you think I should be doing? What could I do next? I had somebody who would follow up if I said, I haven't heard anything back yet. And when I included my advocate in emails, I seemed to get a response quicker, because they knew that somebody else besides me was keeping track of their response time. My advice to anyone else who is pursuing a new accessible van with high-tech driving controls is to start early. The sooner you start the process, the sooner you'll get your van. If you can start the process before your current mode of transportation dies, or before you lose independence with your current vehicle, that will be helpful, because then you'll still be able to drive or have access to the transportation right now while you're working on a replacement vehicle. If it's the first time out and you're thinking, maybe I could drive with high-tech hand controls, be patient. This is a long process, and it can take a while to work through the red tape, to get approval, to get the evaluation. But if you really want to drive, don't give up. Work the system so that you can try and reach out to DRNY and have them help you navigate, because there are so many technologies out there, and it's a shame if somebody who really wants to have access to the technology or access to independence doesn't have the ability to get it.